Welcome back, everybody. Today we are discussing Severance Episode 3 in Perpetuity. This deep dive will traverse the Eagan family line, the hidden messages and maps that PD risked everything to create, and much, much more. If you're enjoying these videos, much like this commenter here, who I chose at random and not because they said nice things about me, be sure to comment, like, and subscribe so that you can stay in the know. This episode begins with PD still in the restroom after he started bleeding last episode. Mark calls from the other side of the door in concern, and with good reason. PD is untethered from reality, and Mark has every reason to question if he will be all right or not.
I have pillows. Do you need anything else?
Yeah, I want you to stop shitting on this awesome robe.
It is early morning and Mark is getting ready for work. PD has some concerns about his safety, worrying that the windows could betray him, and Mark offers some words to put him at ease, but it also reveals this interesting fact.
The neighborhood never really filled up, so it's nice. Quiet.
And I look at this in two ways. Either Lumon really thought people were going to flock to this small little town for work after they announced the severance procedure, or they are operating through obfuscation like the sprawling hallways of the Lumon severed floors. They have a maze where only a few of these houses actually matter, and it's much harder to find people that you're looking for, if you're supposed to be here looking for people at all.
I still think an occasional mixer wouldn't hurt anything.
This is when Irving walks into Mark's basement bathroom, and we transition to them in the office together. This was a beautiful transition filled with a lively conversation that then abruptly ends with Mark's concern.
What's Sunset Park?
I don't know.
The intro plays and we come to Miss Cobell looking at the dirty dishes she made to gift Mark chamomile cookies. It is an odd moment of reflection, and in the background we can hear this fluorescent hum. It feels like the Foley artist is using this as a way to subtly highlight that she's still in that office mindset. It's not a warm, quiet setting. It's the same white noise anthem that she would hear walking down the severed hallways, and I guess we just have to wonder if that gives her comfort or kind of haunts her. She then sits and stares, unblinking at Mark's house. On second watch, I noticed the dismal state of her fridge. It is disgusting. There's half-eaten food everywhere, no lids on anything. It helps shape the true state of this person, as we've seen this hard-ass businesswoman who is quick to temper, but outside of that, she is really just not together. This could be a sign that someone is giving too much of themselves to a job and neglecting their home and their bodies, and I think more than anything, that is what it's telling us. Also, looking at the cookie tray again, look how many cookies are here. It feels like she made sure that Mark was given the perfect lot and baked batch after batch to be sure. This paired with her staring while eating the leftover burnt cookies makes me really think she is obsessed. Like she's doing this to feel close to Mark, but that's something that Lumon would never actually allow. Pair this with her quote from last episode as well.
My late husband was a carpenter. He said he would start building us a house in the hereafter. And there would be a small guest apartment in the back in case I found a new man before I got there.
I am certain it's a come on. She has an unhealthy relationship with this man, and we can only wait in suspense until he learns just how scary that can be.
It's like having two different lives suddenly stitched together. My first day at Lumon's as far back as my 5th birthday, and with 2 pasts, it blurs the present too. But they said it would get better.
PD describes to Mark the issues that he's having and how he is jumping between moments in his lifetime timeline. I could not imagine how scary that would be, how insane you must think that you were, and how compromised you must feel. PD has this haunted camera angle that drives the uneasy feeling, and I just love it. He describes that the people who helped him weren't
Not the fucking WMC. Oh. Someone else.
but another organization that fights this superpower from the shadows.
What do you want from me?
PD doesn't really answer, but asks Mark if he wants to know what he's really doing down there. At this point, we don't really have anything too damning to make Mark see this organization as bad.
There's a group of people that know Severance is a blight on mankind, and they're going to do something about it.
That line means nothing to someone who purposefully agreed to never know and hasn't come to the conclusion that he does need to know. The break room stuff is a little off-putting, sure, but when the Whole Mind Collective says that they could be murdering babies, anything else doesn't really feel all that bad.
I'm not gonna unsever.
PD stresses that he wants Mark to reintegrate and drops an actual bomb.
Look, I found a department, one they don't tell us about. one where you don't get to leave.
Now this is damning and should be considered eye-opening. This is what he needs to know about in order to really consider if he wants to contribute to a system that does this, but he doesn't really know for sure. He's still giving Lumon the benefit of doubt and hearing all of the other voices that told him he is going to two heavens and every other outlandish claim that they made about what he does and who he is. The world has been running rampant with speculation, so when he hears from a credible source that people could never leave that place and they are down there working right now, he laughs that they could be chained up.
I'm not going to talk about it in here. I don't know if the monitors are bugged.
Petey talks about how the monitors could be bugged, which I think we can confirm from Mr. Milchek arriving to check on Irving last episode when he fell asleep. Plus, they have these nifty little cameras, and we did see Irving getting spied on during his wellness visit. We know that they are being monitored carefully, and Miss Cobell, needing to snoop around later, does a good job at showing they don't have the houses actually bugged, but I wonder how long that will truly last. Mark reminds Petey that they are not at Lumon, and it catches him off guard. His head starts hurting immediately and he asks where June is. Petey shares that June is his daughter, and we see Mark leaving the basement to Miss Cobell biting a rather burnt cookie, studying what he could be doing.
Oh, Mark. Are you all right?
This is when we see a news broadcast where a Lumon employee named Natalie defends against allegations of abuse at her company.
What are you saying, Natalie, to the woman who became pregnant at work less than a month after her company went severed?
It's wild to see this played out so publicly, like it's a dogfight, each side weaponizing language and sensitivity to stop the conversation outright. Lumon doesn't care if people are called innies or outies, but if they did, they could fight that point instead of fight that a woman one day came home from work and realized that she was pregnant. I could not imagine how scary that would be.
How could she have that conversation when her workie was the one involved in the conception?
Okay, first of all, working?
That, as I understand, is the preferred term.
I think it's exactly the condescending verbiage that I'd expect from a group trying to save people from their own choices.
I love this part. It introduces the kind of villain that we're facing off against. They are smart. They're unafraid of what they do. Who has an opinion about what they do? They can talk their way out of anything, and I have no doubt that Mark is eating this up, fully believing the woman's side because it serves his confirmation bias that was probably also informed or outright created by similar media. This kind of open villainy, I love it, because after all, there is some truth here. How can you save people from their own choices? How could someone really stop someone else from making a terrible decision ever? You can't. You can beg, you can reason, you can plead, you can fight, but at the end of the day, you can only hope that they see it from your perspective, and as much as you want it, as much as it makes sense, as much as it breaks your heart, it may not to them. And the mentally hurt like Mark who are actively running away from something don't benefit from your perspective. They benefit from doing what they want to do. So one human to another, who is to say which is right and which is wrong? Now, sidebar here. If we can prove that Mark is mentally unfit or compromised, that could be grounds to do more. If we were to say that he is incapable of making choices for himself because he is not in his right mind, the courts could get involved. This really reminds me of the decisions around assisted suicide. What Lumon needs to do is lean into this concept and make sure people are passing psychological evaluations, they're being educated on the operation, signing consent forms that absolutely acknowledge the weight of your actions beyond any shadow of perceivable doubt, like you need to do for an assisted suicide in whichever countries that you live in that allow it. The point is, you can't protect people from their own choices until you can prove that they are a danger to themselves or others. And the other point is that I think Lumon structured themselves in a way to do this exact thing so that nobody could ever claim that they aren't 100% aware and consenting to the operation, and that is why we see this.
I am aware that this alteration is comprehensive and irreversible.
On screen, we can see that they are supposed to be talking about the 4 states proposing anti-severance legislation. It's showing the company somewhat on its back foot at this point in the story. People in the streets protesting, people escaping and reintegrating, and now the government is getting involved. It could be seen as a beacon of hope that we're on the right track, or that this company that controls the conversation to this point, that they aren't even talking about what they're on the news program to talk about, that they're about to show their claws in order to not go down without a fight. Like we're backing them into a corner and we're about to see the true viciousness that comes with capitalism. In some ways, Mark is also being incentivized to stay on the side of Lumon at this point. He has had the procedure, and a few things now have shown us how dehumanizing people can be when they are discussing severance.
Mark's work is sensitive enough as to require the severance procedure.
That's something, isn't it?
That if you're severed, you go to 2 separate hells. Is that true?
Call it someone who's had their brain split in half.
What the people advocating for the end of severance aren't realizing is that real people are making these choices, and using verbiage like this is harmful. They are posturing in such a way that makes themselves feel more sane or logical, because to them, somebody severing is insanity. And that narrative hurts the people that, I don't think they mean to actually hurt. If your words target the people making the choice instead of the system itself, you alienate them. You keep them further over to the other side that you're trying to actively combat against. You make the people that have made the choice feel more comforted by the system that you think is doing legitimate harm, because you made it clear you think they are dumb for doing what they thought was best. They naturally lean into the other side because it doesn't make them feel weird at the dinner table or call them half-brains on national television. Mark is in a system where there is this appearance of two sides combating each other, but neither one and their collective, arguing is ultimately what makes him not want to leave. Even if he does, will he forever be viewed as a moron for once getting the procedure? Will he have to educate people that it wasn't a big deal after his conceptual other half is dead? What part of this is making Mark really consider more than the comfortable state that he is used to? He wakes up with an unfinished glass of something dark, and we see this really cool shot of the houses. This framing makes them look smaller than they were before, and maybe it's to make him feel smaller, or the graveyard seem larger in comparison, or maybe it's just to highlight how many people have come before Mark that lived and died while working at Lumon.
Wake up, Petey.
I'm not gonna reintegrate.
He politely declines Petey's invitation for reintegration and explains that it is because he lost his wife in a car accident a few years ago. And that's when Petey drops this bomb of a statement.
At work, you would come in sometimes with red eyes. We had a joke that you had an elevator allergy. You carry the hurt with you. You feel it down there too. You just don't know what it is.
Which highlights that the body keeps score. Even if you could just stop remembering why you were sad moment to moment, your body has a physical reaction to the chemicals that get released when you are sad or when you cry or when you are happy. You're not escaping the pain by severing. Some part of you is still dealing with it. You're just not remembering having dealt with it. You're missing the rest of the grieving process, like the catharsis that comes after you cry in your car at work.
Oh! Hi!
Hey.
Miss Cobell and Mark have a little chat, and then he takes off for work. As someone who has lived in places that freeze, this feels like it's just further highlighting that old grandma feel. Like she's doing atypical, quirky things in public and, in his view to make herself seem less of a danger or a threat, right? It's kind of a mask. And I also want to highlight that I'm not calling this actress old, but they are making Miss Cobell and Mrs. Silvig behave much differently. And Mrs. Silvig is taking on this sometimes daft but completely non-threatening role. And again, that's for a reason. While Mark goes into the office, she sneaks into his home. This was a wild invasion of privacy that really didn't feel too strange when it happened, but it should have. This isn't normal behavior, but for the stasis they have created, why wouldn't we expect this? We then see a general announcement paper, and it really just lists word for word what he says moments later. They also give them the new desk pictures.
I did a thing.
Helly explains that she deleted the scary numbers while he was gone yesterday, and this is the first time any Mark is realizing that he missed a day of work. Another fine print in the system that is easily overlooked. You missing work means that your any misses days of their lives. Imagine if you were really sick on the outside and your inside self was witnessing a story over the course of months. New people coming and going, and each time you returned to the office, whenever you felt well enough to return, just things were different. You constantly debating internally if anything was even wrong with you or if your outside self was lying for reasons you could never understand. You making a good friend that you look forward to seeing the next day, and then suddenly you're gone for 6 months and come back to them, but something is off. They aren't the same person you remembered from your perceived yesterday. This feels like such a cool thing to explore, and maybe season 2 has some stuff like this. And if not, writers, Season 3, hit me up.
You may as well skip it, actually. I put in my resignation request.
Helly notes that he can trash the new photos too because she will be gone shortly, and only seconds go by before that sweet dream of escape is sabotaged.
Never seen a resignation request get such a quick turnaround.
The music shifts as the weight bears down on her and she runs for the bathroom.
Oh, this is so fun.
We see Devin and Rickon dropping off his soon-to-be-released book and overall just looking like a big goof.
Perfect.
Good.
I mean, it's perfect.
Yes.
And why do I feel like both people in this moment? Kudos to Devin. She loves this man. And even with every justified reason to snap at her husband, she doesn't. She keeps an upbeat tone and simply shakes her head through what is obviously getting her irritated, right? Like, sometimes this is what true love looks like. And yeah. Oh God, would have been nice. Would have been nice. I want to know what love is.
Oh, he's going to be so excited.
Yeah.
I hope he comes home early.
He's not going to.
This is when Miss Cobell tiptoes over and grabs the book from his front door. She enters his home with a golden key, and I think the color choice of this little tag is purposeful. It screams master key or skeleton key, and it screams a company mandated clause that lets managers cross boundaries when they believe that it's justified. Spoiler alert, it is never justified. Getting this information out to the world that managers could have skeleton keys to their Audi's homes is massive, but it also could just be Miss Cobell being kind of a crazy person here. Miss Cobell and Petey have a fun little game of cat and mouse, and it's intensified by the idea that he could have a mental break at any second. She also steals his candle from his dead wife. Petey slips away while she takes a phone call and agrees to come help with whatever is going on at the office.
Are you okay?
I'm fine.
I mean, it's been like 45 minutes.
Helly tries writing a secret note on her arms, and Mark tries to manage her.
I don't want to work here with you. So don't burst into the bathroom with your pathetic boss voice on and try to convince me that I do.
After a heated exchange, he leaves to find Irving eavesdropping and offering a solution. He cites that focusing on the incentives is the thing making her crazy because she needs purpose. He brings up the Perpetuity wing, and it's really not clear if this is a good idea or not as Mark considers what to do. We see Miss Cobell handing off the stolen goods to Mr. Milchek. He is to check it for hidden messages, and this open operation kind of affirms my beliefs that they have some company policies that make doing this invasive thing totally fine and completely normal.
I'm learning to be emotionally nude in front of my wife.
Checking for messages.
As if that is a normal thing to say to a coworker after you stole another coworker's package from their front door. It is so strange, and it develops the underlying bad shit that we need to actually know about Lumon. They are invasive, and if this encryption and data privacy is what macro data refinement is actually up to, this would kind of be an interesting hypocrisy. They know the necessity or, the luxury of privacy, but can't afford to give it to their own employees.
Did you fill out an official request for supervisory interaction?
Mark enters to talk to Miss Cobell, and immediately the conversation shifts to a discussion about forms. The whole discussion just feels like Mark is stumbling his way through and irritating his boss, but with everything that happened, it feels like a mask that she wears to separate herself. Like, she may be severed. I don't think she is. I think that we know that she's not, but there is this like right brain, left brain, different personality thing going on. And right now, all we can really say or believe is that it's a mask that she puts on to be a good boss, or what she perceives to be a good boss. Obviously, not a good boss.
Why are you gonna make me throw my mug at you?
Why would you?
And then she says some truly manipulative shit. She is doing things that could hurt people and then framing it in this light of, this was harder on me than it was on you. And it is gross, but the delivery is perfect and haunting. I would hate to be Mark in this room.
Open or closed?
Both.
We return to a conversation about muscle shows with Dylan and Irving while Helly plans the most painful pill possible. Mark catches her and delivers a great warning about it being Mr. Grainer's job to extract the message and how that might not be worth the effort.
And when he asks
how long ago you ingested it, I really can't recommend honesty enough.
They then start making their way to the Perpetuity wing, and we get some interesting information about the world while the others try not to die of boredom en route. Irving says that all 8 CEOs have been of the Eagan lineage dating back to the founder. It creates an empire operating through modern bureaucracy and corporation, and the power of that should not be understated. The Eagan family line is something sacred to someone out in the real world, and any company lasting this long is a feat. It makes you wonder if the secret of their success is something menacing, like what could have been before Severance that made them so powerful for so long. Irving brings up some drama about the former CEO Ambrose, who is somewhat of a black sheep, and the others share bingo cards as a way to connect.
It'll be an excellent opportunity for everyone except Herb to bond.
This is when optics and design and macro data refinement are at a crossroads. For some reason, this is a tense moment that calms when Irving and Herb start talking to each other. This then abruptly ends when Dylan starts going hard.
Egg drop challenge in the team building space. Tight department like us gotta keep our synergy up.
Egg drop challenge. You buy this fucking shit?
And then we come to the spokesperson we saw last night on the news broadcast named Natalie. She says this meeting is about Petey and the board is joining them. These two trade looks of concern, and the meeting starts with a strong silence that reminds me of that one Office episode.
I am declining to speak first.
Right away, I wonder if the person we are seeing is severed or not. I'm also considering this magical box that may or may not have anybody listening in it. And it has the same effect that we saw in episode 1, where the box could really just be a ploy so that the person meant to have the power in these situations can have the power, when in reality, they are all just essentially powerless and doing tasks because some fabled voice box keeps telling them to do their job.
Not to be alarmist, but prior to his departure, there were some troubling signs of possible reintegration.
Ms. Cobell outright addresses that Petey was here while being unsevered, and it gets shot down as an impossibility. It does really make me wonder about the note that we saw before and why Mr. Milchek didn't check the book for hidden messages like he checked the book that she just stole from Mark's home. But this conversation does start forming some of the motivations of Ms. Cobell. She knows that something is up, but her higher-ups aren't listening. It is maddening, and she intends to prove herself correct.
And for what it's worth,
The board has concluded the call.
Yes, okay.
We return to macro data refinement, walking in a seemingly never-ending hallway system. Dylan says that O&D doesn't share their values, that Kier separated each department by virtue.
Kier sorted the departments by virtue, macro dats are clever and true, while O&D's more cruelty-centered.
How many departments are there?
Probably 30.
5. No one's quite...
It's a really odd remark, and while the number of virtues or departments is unknown, it still feels like this is something that could have additional weight when we explore how this place really came to be.
O&D tried a violent coup on the others decades ago, and that's why they reduced them down to 2, and that's why they keep us all so far apart now.
That's an absolute fiction.
And from our perspective, it's impossible for Dylan to actually know this. This could be true or an absolute fiction, like Irving says. I kind of believe it, again, because it's one of those just strange things that are just strange enough to be true. This does lead to Mark and Helly bonding a little bit, which, of course, we love to see.
If they come back and attack us, I think we should kill Mark.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. So they think we're crazy with nothing to lose.
Smart. That's smart.
They arrive at the Perpetuity wing, and we see Dusk himself.
Come now, children of my industry, and know the children of my blood.
This is such a strange line. It's basically saying that everybody is family to him, like he's ushering his workers or the people who spent time in the industry climbing the ranks to know his family line. In the context that all of the CEOs are Eagans, it just feels like propaganda to say, hey, we're all family here, but I'm going to need you to accept my Nepo baby who will someday come into the picture and be y'all's boss, okay? Like, we're all family here, but... daddy's talking, and what I say goes. On the wall, we also see these two quotes: "The remembered man does not decay," and "History lives in us whether we learn it or not." The history within us remark, it invokes this idea, at least for me, about the body keeping score, your brain retaining more than you think it does, and potentially being able to tap into that to learn from it. History does live in us. In theory, you could identify why you have a stress reaction to seeing cats, right? Just as a random example, no real world, I'm not afraid of cats. I don't know where these allegations are coming from, but let's say your mom was haunted during her pregnancy by feral mating outside of her window, and that released stress hormones into her body, which then went into your developing body, and now whenever you see cats, it stresses you out or you have some kind of anxiety. This is a rough example of something called epigenetics. You can read more about this in a book called It Doesn't Start With You. It is a very good book. It talks about this, not this example, but this exact thing, epigenetics, in a great digestible way. It Doesn't Start With You. Highly recommend. Side note, that book also enlightened me to the fact that we are first affected by our grandmothers and their environments before our mothers are even out of the womb, because women are born with all of the eggs they will ever have. When your mother is developing inside of her mother, the cells that will be 50% of you are forming as well. In perhaps a strictly wholesome way, we were once three people sharing a single body, connected in ways we don't fully understand. We were impacted by how our grandmothers ate and drank, how our mothers did the same, how they took care of their bodies, the amount of stress they experienced during pregnancy, and just maybe the amount of hedonistic outside cats that kept them up all night long. Like, the body keeps score. The history lives within us. Some of the reasons you behave the way you do is because of systems, both mental and physical, that started developing while you were mostly cells. That frightful feline history could in theory be sourced from you, even if you don't learn the history yourself, because the markers are here in the present in your body and can still be observed. And theoretically, with enough data, you could trace it all the way back until you fully understand the history that got from point A to point B. This is what it's saying to me. And because the Eagan family line appears to be a thing that we need to know about, I wonder what history they're trying to actually access. We then come to the remembered man does not decay. It invokes these feelings of immortality, and with everything I just spoke about, it's eerie to think about what they could be doing and trying to access. Something with life and death is going on or happening at Lumon, and the Perpetuity wing is a little too on the nose now that we've gone into everything here. The remembered man does not decay, and the history lives on in him whether we learn it or not. To me, this is about remembering the history that lives on in him and not the history we explicitly learned.
Remarkable man.
Handsome, too. See those brows?
We then see the rest of the Eagans in wax form, and hear a clip that I really wish I could just play out so that we could all listen to it together. It is an audio recording from Keir Eagan, the founder of Lumon, and this is what he said.
People have begun to ask what I see as my life's great achievement. I have identified 4 components: woe, frolic, dread, malice. Should you tame the tempers as I did mine, then the world shall become but your appendage.
There is so much to dive into here, and I'm not going to share all of my thoughts because moments like this are open to such beautifully chaotic interpretation. It would truly be hours. I could spend days talking about how we could interpret this thing. It is so fun. But the first thing I want to start with is the woe, frolic, dread, malice. These are the 4 categories that the refiners are splitting data into. Now, in the sense that these are how a single man was able to see the world and tame his tempers, and somehow the world with that, the refiners could be taming tempers. Since geography is a thing that they need to remember with the line about Delaware, and the names of the files are names of real places, it seems like they could be doing something to control the masses. Taming the tempers of the people living in these areas through encoded influence, and finding areas that they could add subliminal messaging into TV ads and add more, Sever Me Now fluoride into the water supply. Maybe that's what it means to have the world become your appendage. You are learning to move and control it like you would your own hand. The idea that these are all that makes a person is interesting too, seeing as how frolic is the only one that appears to be good or positive. These words are meant to paint a picture of a stoic or enlightened man who fully understands himself and is able to perfectly control himself and thus the world at all times. But he named these tempers in such a cynical way, I don't know if he ever actually achieved this or just said that he did, and then the myth became the legend and they printed the legend. There are varying levels of joy, suffering, being content, being a transformer. I don't know what emotions y'all have, but That's what I deal with. It could be possible to break our emotions or our tempers, assuming those are the same things, which may be a mistake. It may be possible to break those into 4 categories, but would 3 of them be negative? Like, I don't think so. I don't think the majority of mine or my emotions are negative emotions. I think he learned how to do something with the control of these tempers and the masses, and it was delusion that told him that this was all that makes us human. I also feel like this entire thing is meant to be somewhat ridiculous, and it relates to Rickon. Slight spoiler, but later we will hear Rickon read from his book that he dropped off from Mark, and I would love if everybody could consider the words of this great founder in the same way that we consider the words of Rickon when he's reading his book. I suspect the showrunners are building to a big reveal, though I want to talk about that later in the episodes when I can actually cite those moments. But man, there is just something that is so grandiose, so like delusional. Like it feels like Rickon in some kind of way. And yeah, I can't wait to talk about that. He says that he is sharing this power to control the world with his children, but because he just referenced his children as either children of industry or, of his blood, it could be either. The refiners could be in the cave right now and in a similar state to Kier when he was trying to tame his own tempers. Some part of this feels religious or philosophical, but it also could be the rantings of an old man that, much like the Bible, could have been bastardized a million times to justify the powers that be using the powers they have. And the last thing that I want to note about this self-aggrandizing speech is that we see Petey wandering alone in the world while this plays out as a voiceover. I think it's meant to highlight how lost Petey is without this guidance in his life anymore, how he was on a path to truly understand something greater, but is now just alone in a metaphorical cave trying to find direction that makes sense. We also see the nickname Pip here, and if you recall, Pip's was the name of the place that he went to eat after he was given a gift card after his workplace injury, and his sister laughed at him.
Pips.
Of course it's Pips.
We also hear from another former CEO talking about how Lumon will save the world. And I think just the importance of that is that it's setting the scale, right? Like, they're not doing small things. It's, it's control of the masses. It's taking over the world. It's saving the world. It's, purging the threat of greed or something, or, people that can't tame their own tempers. Hitler believed he had the fucking plan to save the world. And I think that's what we should need to highlight here. I don't feel like there's much more than that. Helly crosses out a bingo square and Mark catches her. I have listed every square courtesy of the Severance wiki. Some of these are interesting. Child with rickets maybe highlights family adversities or their early days helping people medically. Prominent wax bulge or wax tears, perhaps showing how they inflect with purpose for power or for sympathy or maybe insecurity. Unexplained Eagan death feels like a whole thing to unpack. Family killing family being the first implication. Goodliness and the halo comment establishing a sense of right and wrong and the authority to decide which is which. I'll just say this, Lumon and the Eagan family has a rather inflated sense of self.
Isn't that lovely?
It's beautiful. It almost makes me wish I remembered my own childhood.
Irving then talks about how history gives people context and shape and is how we identify who we are as people. Us being able to remember who we are is a major part of who we are. In terms of people being inside of a cave, or another way to put that is people being ignorant to something or unable to see because of their environment, them being without history and being severed is something of a cave as well.
But then I learned that I work for a company that has been actively caring for mankind since 1866.
It's really interesting that Irving is the voice here. He isn't the manager, but he educates and tries to offer perspective to Helly in a rather positive way. This got me thinking about the 4 categories and how there are 4 of them on this team. I then did some digging and found that this is a known theory. There's also some color theory that supports this, but really I want to hear from you. Is this strictly a coincidence, or is there a reason that this matches like this? Which of these severed workers frolics, which woes, which one has dread in their heart, and which is, malice?
Jesus.
No, Kier.
They then take Helly to this really interesting and absolutely haunted replica of the founder's home.
I hate this place. It smells like 19th century ass.
Stop treating this like some kind of beer party.
Irving then finds out about the bingo cards and freaks out on Mark after Mark starts really going in on Irving about how he doesn't want to be a manager, how he didn't ask for this. And then it got my mind thinking, like, how did he? Because if Irving's the one who's like actually qualified with the interview process, like he knew it better with this or with educating Helly, it's like he is truly a part of this system in a way that Mark isn't. So why isn't he the manager? And to me, right now, with what we know, it really feels like it could only be favoritism because, somebody likes somebody else and is staring at some homes and making some cookies. But, I don't really know.
I didn't ask for Petey to disappear and for...
Oh, yeah, and Helly ran away. Mark chases her through the hallways, and this moment really highlights how chaotic this place is. We briefly see Mr. Milchick flicking through the pages and mocking Rickon's words before we see Helly break open the stairwell window to get a note out to her outside self. Mark stops her and cuts her arm open on the broken glass in the process.
This way, please, Hellier.
Mr. Grainer walks her to the break room, and we see a little bit more of the process. Mr. Milchick starts by tending to her wounds and offering some ominous moments before they begin the breaking. She puts her hands on these hand-shaped indents, and to me this feels like a sensor of some kind, maybe to track her heart rate or levels of stress or something. The wall behind her has this black triangle that makes her look like more isolated or in the shadows or something. I'm not too sure why they created this composition, but it looks like a reverse spotlight, and I think it behaves exactly like that. It's interesting, it's beautiful, it's like she has no space, it is all against her right now. He gives her the compunction statement, which is a word I didn't have to look up, losers, and she has the words projected at her. She doesn't want to do it at first, but then she does. And it's kind of weird, like something is going on here through frequency or hypnosis or vibrations or outright mind control or something. They are making them do this. I don't have evidence of this exactly, but the way that he says,
"No, do,"
makes me really think that she is being forced or maybe trained like Pavlov to do this. She repeats it and we transition away, but before that, let's briefly talk about what she is saying. Nothing major, just fancy ways of saying I'm sorry and I'm wrong a bunch, but it does have subtle tones of being grateful that the people in charge are more wise and are putting her through that punishment because, she was lost. Like, she is at fault. She messed up, she lost her way, and she is just a scared little sheep that needed the shepherd to come save her.
Jesus.
No, Kia.
This really is a great slow burn moment where you realize just how scary this place can be as you're forced to do this thing over and over and over again without ever knowing when you'll stop.
Again.
Really?
This is when he finds the map left by Petey, and genius. Like, it feels like he knew that Mark would get the role. He knew that a new picture would be close to follow. I think we can assume as much because it probably happened whenever Petey also became manager. Of course, it's the map that we saw before, but with so much more detail. We're here before you're not all there. Some people might live here. 2 arrows leaving his eyes, 1 arrow leaving an ear. O&D is off the map entirely, unmappable. Like, they don't want him to find it, or he has no ability to trace it back, or maybe has never seen it other than a single time or something, or by name. I don't really know. Coil of Doom besides the Perpetuity wing, this mind and then a virus looking thing. It kind of feels like a CPU. It kind of looks like it's on fire or infected, like these are like little virus squiggles. This entire thing feels creepy, and it gets creepier the longer you stare at it. Like, what is this face? Is this a compass or a legend or some kind of how he would orient himself? What am I looking at? Why does he think that some people might live here? And are these the ones that don't get to go home?
You really don't get to leave, as in they're down there right now.
It is a confused map with a few of these up and down arrows or markers that symbolize the elevators. So, possibly more than one here. Point out if you see anything else strange, let me know in the comments below. Mark suddenly realizes that he needs to protect this and puts it behind the new desk picture. This is when we come to Petey on the outside trying to keep himself together.
Can't even know tokens.
This really strange thing happens with Petey and Mark. Mark scans his badge and it's like it's cut in such a way that it's directly affecting Petey miles away. It could be nothing, or it could be done for the pace of the scene, but the idea that they are linked in mysterious ways also has some merit. Last episode, Petey started really losing it when his cell phone rang, and it was cut in this exact same way. Like outside forces are triggers in some kind of way. They could have like proximity readers with these implants that detect when each other is entering or leaving the building, or perhaps something related to the reason that they need to stagger the entrance and exits of each severed worker. It's not clear, but if it does, and they are networked in some kind of way, him leaving the building could, in theory, have caused Petey to kind of freak out here. And he eventually finds Petey being walked away. He makes eye contact with Mark, and then he drops.
You got that? Just stand back. Yeah, dispatch.
No spoilers, of course, but let's assume the worst, right? Let's assume he dies, or is seriously hurt, or is found out about. Ultimately, what I'm really curious about is this eye contact at the end here. Like, would he be able to escape this moment, this physical moment, by jumping into a memory? Like, if this was him dying, if this was the worst point in his entire life, could he theoretically jump into a memory and avoid it entirely? Also, now that I am really thinking about how the scene from before, like when he was getting lost and then we were learning about the remembered man does not decay and the history lives on in him, whether we learn it or not, could reintegration let you traverse your mind purposefully? Could you master this ability to enter the cave of your mind and tame your tempers, to relive those moments and learn the history that lives on inside of us? Something about this just feels so perfect to me.
What were you drawing?
You getting back to work in Cuba's form.
Okay, two things.
One last note about this scene is that this is the Kier police. This is the town Kier, which was named after the founder of Lumon. And right now, because we know that Petey is on the outskirts, because we know the town history and the weight that this name has, these feel more like henchmen than police officers, right? Like, it feels like they have such a level of control, and I mean, who's going to stop them at this point? Mark then drives home and starts straightening up, hiding the evidence that Petey was ever there, and we see the cell phone ringing. It comes from a blocked number, and we are left to wonder what Mark will do. But with that, we come to the end of the video. This episode was so incredible. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Also, I kind of tried to upgrade my audio in a big way with this video. I was noticing a lot of background noise. I was noticing a lot of mouth noise. Ultimately, I hope that it's obvious that I'm trying to eliminate those and create just truly something that in 10 years I can look back on and be proud of. And I hope that you enjoy it as well. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Again, big shout out to Michael Link and all of the other wonderful patrons over on Patreon. If you want to support what is so clearly a single man sharing his intimate thoughts on television shows alone in the dark with you, please consider joining Patreon today. Much love, everybody, and I cannot wait to talk to you all again soon. Oh yeah, and check out Brody Keene. He is my best friend's older brother and has been making music for years now. He clearly deserves some love, and I'm glad that I have access to this track and a legally binding Facebook message saying that I can use it before his music is getting millions of streams, and we can all be proud of this member of our community. Much love, everybody, and episode 4 is on the way.